Hmm. Hello, Peter. Well, my definition of consciousness is the world. So maybe you're talking about Awareness. um, and the world, that's a big word. I guess the world is an aspect of self, of the awareness. But there's no connection between the thought realm and the physical realm. This is the illusion, is that the thought realm is relating to, and there's a causal relationship between the thought realm and the physical realm, but there really isn't. This is the illusion that the thought realm is relating to the physical realm, and it actually isn't. They're two parallel systems. See, when when that question is posed, it's just introducing the opportunity for more thought. And thought is just Maya dangling something in front of your face to draw your attention away from self. Just like the entire physical world, just like the entire physical world is all here to distract attention away from pure self-awareness. But this physical realm doesn't hold our attention anymore because it's run out. Its potential for novel experiences has run out. So we're looking for more new novel experiences, or something that holds our interest, and that's what Maya is producing. Maya is like, well, look at all this other realm. Isn't that interesting? Why don't you shift over there and start paying attention to that? And that can be your new realm, your new accepted fundamental reality. So the game is to remain completely self aware and basically ignore all of this, all of the senses, all of the thoughts. You ignore it, you stay focused on the frame of reference upon which all of that is arising, which is the stillness, and then that's the game. Game over. Hello, Ryan. Um, Joining together in truth, I think. Reflection, well, everything is reflection. We're just taking the reflection to be the reality. Just like when you look into a mirror, we've just taken the appearance in the mirror to be the self. We've just been so intrigued by the reflection of our own image, is that we're focused so intently on the reflection that we take it to be self, and that's the problem. That's the game. I know it's incredibly hard to accept that all the reason for all of this, or that all of this, your entire life, is a labyrinth to escape from. There's no end to it. There's no conclusion to it until you conclude it. So the purpose for all of this isn't to keep living. It's actually to die and not come back. I shouldn't say come back because that infers that this is the fundamental reality and we arise and pass within it. I should say that no more worlds will arise within your awareness upon the completion of the game. I don't know what that is, what Carl Friston's free energy principle is. Could you explain it? Free energy. See, energy to me is the potential. So when you're talking about energy, you're basically talking about the self because I equate self with potential, pure potential, the zero. Yeah, I hear that phrase a lot, the Markov blankets. Now to me that sounds like something that it's they're tweaking things, aren't it's like calculus, right? It's like, well, if we do this, then maybe we can get a little bit like what do the blankets do? What are they hiding something? They're dividing something, aren't they? Yeah, but uncertainty, so that's within the realm of thought. To be certain or uncertain, that's relating to thought. So non-conceptuality, my thing, is it transcends all that. So certainty is the thought-free state. Thought is uncertainty. What is uncertain about being? Yeah, that's what I thought. Blankets basically is just another more maybe more subtle way of producing dualism so you can keep talking about the shit, right? You need but my model is far more succinct and obvious, right? There oh, it's a blanket dividing these two realms. If you're gonna have a model that's trying to define or express fundamental reality, it has to be exact. You have to start with two. You have to start with two. And these two things must be absolutely separate. They can't be fuzzy. Because if there's fuzziness, then it's the uncertainty principle, right? If you can't know the speed, the momentum, and position of a subatomic particle. If you're so my model is the one to work with because the fundamental model of reality because it's the state of superposition where the mind and the body, the yin and the yang, The particle and the wave function, they're all very distinct. You have to start with things that are completely distinct, and then you can start with an actual formalization of a theory. But to me, a blanket, that just, there's abstract stuff going on there, and it's fuzzy, and I don't imagine that any concrete answers will ever come from something that's using a Markov blanket. Because how do you describe the blanket? It just, it's all turtles. It doesn't matter. Every single one of these models that is using symbol, basically, is, it's all turtles all the way, unless you understand my fundamental model of reality, which is the triune system. Unless you understand that reality is the superposition, then your model is going to be incorrect, because the yin isn't fundamental, the yang isn't fundamental. They're both just illusions, appearances. And you, after the appearances, after the illusions arise, you can't put two illusions together to try to make them disappear. That doesn't happen. You have to be prior to the illusions arising. Well, a statistic has nothing to do with what's going on now, does it? A statistic is always in the past. See, I'm trying to use thought to point out that thought will always be incomplete. So there's no way to come up with a concluding thought to thoughts via thought. But that's what they keep doing, because they don't realize what the true purpose of thought is. Thought is just another way of Maya pulling attention away from self. And that's the whole game. The whole game is just whatever it takes for Maya to pull your attention away from self. That's the game. And now human consciousness is very fascinated with the thought realm. And that is what's pulling our attention away from self instead of the physical realm of the senses. It's a new, we're in a transition period leading to a new iteration of samsara. And that iteration will be the thought realm, which is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Yeah, but while all that is happening, you're at the very core of what's happening is through all of that process of all that thinking, all it's doing is diverting your attention away from self. That, it's a zero sum game. This game has one purpose, and that is to remember self. That's the whole purpose of all of this. So everything that Carl's doing, I'm sorry, Carl, is just at that moment pulling Carl's attention away from self. And whoever's reading Carl's stuff, while they're reading Carl's stuff, they are, their attention is being pulled away from self. So everything, this, that, the meaning and reason for everything that everyone does becomes very apparent when you start living this. But the problem is that 99.99% of everything that humans do is an attempt to make this appear more real rather than trying to transcend it and getting to reality. It's a lot of effort to keep this illusion going. Well, yeah, thought can find a foot. Everything that humans has created is that foothold, is it not? But you'll see that all of it is collapsing. Everything that thought has created within the physical realm is now collapsing, right? Governments, banks, all of the institutions, all of civilization and all of society that's been created via mind and thought, it's all collapsing now. So thought and the physical realm mixed like oil and water. it it doesn't work. They don't coexist together. They are other ofs. So you can flip from one to the next, but you have to be either completely in the thought realm or completely in the physical realm. And right now we're in a transition phase. It's really very simple. And it's just transcending thought. That is the next evolutionary step in the natural evolution of increasing self-awareness is the transcendence of thought. And if you're going to devolve, take a step down the ladder, if you will, instead of up, then you'll follow everything that mind has created within the physical realm, which is technology. Yes, because science is the new religion and they don't realize it, but it's a cult. we must realize that humanity's fucked, right? We are destroying all life on a planet. We are fucking an entire planet up. And we've done this via technology and everything that thought has created within this realm. So they don't mix. We've blindly followed science and academia because we're just kids. We're born into delusion, and it's the blind leading the blind. The deluded are leading our kids. So we just get caught in this cycle of just accepting everything that the cult leader says, and the cult leader is academia. And what's academia? Well, it's all thought, isn't it? So if there's a conspiracy theory, you could put Maya at the top of it, and all of academia are the strings. All of academia, because it's all thought. It's the antithesis of meditation. Academia is the antithesis of spirituality because it's following thought. And academics can't break out of that. They're too mired. They're too interested in the thought realm. They identify their the self with the thoughts. But systems of thought are mechanisms through which to produce more thought. That's it. And the importance of those thoughts are only how to engage your attention even deeper. So the more interesting those thoughts appear, the more Maya has you. Isn't that a wonderful trick? Like, it's genius, right? To make it appear as though thought is leading to some final truth when it's actually the complete opposite. It's brilliant. I used to I used to want to save the world, and I used to get really frustrated at all these brilliant academics who are supposed to be wise and talking about truth and reality and all this stuff incessantly, by the way, like just nonstop talking about it, just talk, 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 talk. But now it's I understand we're at the end, right? So we are in a in the deepest state of delusion possible because we're at the end. So I understand now why hardly anyone is willing to accept my theory and my model because we're in Kali Yuga. Whoever finds this and follows it, that's the way it was supposed to be, with just natural growth, natural momentum, word of mouth, basically. Yeah, exactly. In a world where everyone's deluded, the sane person looks crazy. But what is so bizarre about just not thinking? Why is that? Do you ever see anyone just sitting in a public place, just sitting like this? Just completely self sufficient, self fulfilled, just content, just sitting there in happiness, in their own natural happiness. No, you never see that, do you? That human, all those humans will always be looking at the screen, reading a book, something. They'll be focused on something exterior. The entire species. So the crazy person is the person that looks that is just sitting there like I am, just sitting there in an airport, just sitting there like this. And everyone else that's taken to be normal is this or this, looking at a screen, reading a book, or looking at a screen, looking at a screen, eating, looking at a screen. That's taken to be normal. Whereas I look at that as completely fucking bizarre. Why are you focused on this tiny little two-dimensional surface? It's fucked. Yeah. It's the most practical thing. It's the most practical thing. When you're laying in bed, tossing and turning because your thoughts can't turn off, well, maybe that should be addressed. Maybe the fact that you can't stop and control your own mind, maybe that should be addressed. But Maya wants that on the down low, right? So we're not allowed to talk about things. We're not allowed to talk about things that actually matter because the delusion will come, it will be so obvious. So people just don't want to talk about it, like death or anything on the negative side, right? The positive and the negative. Anything that's on the negative side, we just try to ignore, cover up. Yeah, I've got a smartphone, of course. And I look at the fucking thing too often. Yes. Yeah, I know some people who need to have a TV on to get to sleep in their room. Like, oh, wow, right? Constant stimulation, even when they're freaking sleeping. We're so messed up. We're so unnatural. I think solitude is really important on the spiritual path because in the death state, there's only you, right? Like, there's really only you. So if you can't be alone with you, then there's an issue. You're going to be in timelessness, just you, and you're going to be content. then in this relative realm, you should be able to be content in the relative realm. Because if you're not content here, you certainly won't be content when there's just you and nothing else. Yeah, right. Pills. Right. That's materialism, thinking that the cause is some sort of material deficiency or something, some sort of chemical imbalance in the brain. That's what it is. No, the chemical imbalance in the brain is an expression of your delusion. Instead of giving us pills, we should be taught how to shift awareness. That's what should be done. Is our healthcare process should be being taught to meditate, basically. Just be aware of the awareness and just abide there. That's it. That will solve all of the problems. So there is a silver bullet and it's called meditation, but you got to stick with it. Well, I mean, we're all soulmates, right? Because we're all the same spirit. That which is looking through your eyes is that which is looking through these eyes. That being said, I am and have been in a perfect relationship for 6 years now. So I could say that maybe I've found a soulmate, I guess. I don't know. we, there is probably something about recognizing the self in others. I don't know. All I know is that Paige and I haven't had a fight ever. We've never really had any problems. Whenever we get to have problems, one person just goes silent for a while and we don't talk about the problems. This is the problem, is that talking about the problem makes that problem more relevant and more pertinent and keeps it alive. Whereas if you notice that that problem is just your problem in your head, and that problem needs to be transcended in your head. See, Paige is on the same page, on the same frequency as me. So when she has a problem with me, she knows that that's a problem with her thought processes, and she just goes quiet and lets that pass. And then we're good again. So it's not about changing the other person or changing anything or you getting having your desires met or your needs met and all this nonsense in a relationship. If both people in the relationship are focused on their spiritual life, then the relationship will work because there's no egos involved. And ego is the cause of all problems. Yeah, I don't look for anything. Just look for yourself. Just keep going to the stillness, and whatever comes from that naturally to you, that's what's supposed to happen. That's following your dharma. If you're following I want dot 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 or I anything I am dot dot dot, then that's karmic. If you're basing your actions on some sort of I want dot dot dot, then that is a karmic action because that I is false. That there isn't even that I doesn't even exist. So any actions that are taken from that standpoint of I want or I need, well, that I itself is an illusion. So that's just karma and it won't work. So just abide, just attend to your spiritual life 100%. And whatever comes to you, that's your dharma. That's the natural way of your life unfolding and your karmic momentum slowing down. If you keep adding I want dot dot dot, then that's pushing down the gas pedal more, right? Your karmic momentum will never slow and stop if you keep thinking I dot dot dot. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but don't go out and search it. Don't make it happen. Don't try to make things happen. Let things happen and just watch. Just be attentive from that thought-free state. Just be aware, and that's the true secret. That's the law of attraction. Is you just get the fuck out of the way. It just again, this is a good segue into what I just said. This all just occurred, right? Like especially since I met Paige, my energy hasn't gone into trying to fix the relationship or always dealing with the relationship. So that left energy free to flow into the manifestation of the Dharma. So all of this material stuff just kind of occurred as a result of my spiritual practice. I had no plans. I've got no 5-year plans. I don't have budgets. I don't do any of that shit. But I attend to my spiritual life as best I can. And stuff like this just happens. It just becomes effortless and miraculous. I can hardly believe when I wake up. I've been lower middle class my whole life. And now I live in a 6,000 square foot mansion on 30 hectares on a lake. Like, okay, I'll take it. Uh, but attend to this. Nothing matters. Even this can take my attention away from self if I want it to be. I've got a farm. I'm developing a farm and a water business here. And it could easily, I could easily get caught up in the details of all this and thinking that it's more important than transcending all of this. High school, I had a 63 average in grade 12. Lots of 49s and creates. Oh no. Yeah, I mean, but that's not you, right? Like that we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Yeah. It's far I don't know, it's almost self-evident to say that it's better effortlessness is easier. Like effortlessness is easier. Um, but when you're really struggling against something, you know you exist because you're pushing so hard against the world that you know you exist because the world's pushing back, right? So that's what everyone's doing. Everyone's doing not their dharma, but karma. So you're pushing against what the universe wants for you, and in that pushing, you feel something, right? So you know you exist when you feel that push against the entire universe. But when you know what you really are, then you can flow with the universe and it just becomes effortless and you don't need to feel anything anymore. Wow. So you need a little bit more time to realize your enlightenment. I mean, when you say we're all close to death, because if you take the time scale of 13.8 billion years, and let's say I've got 20 more years and you've got 20 more days, well, what's the difference when we're talking about 13.8 billion years? It's this, whether it's 20 minutes from now, 20 hours from now, 20 days from now, or 20 years from now, it's that. So we should always be preparing for that moment. I mean, there's this thing about Earth School and there being a test. Well, the test is at death because where you put your awareness at that moment of death is the test. That's the writing of the test. That's the final, whether you pass or fail, all depends on where your attention lies when the body passes. So we need to prepare for this rather than just trying to ignore death and not talk about it and try to avoid it at all costs. We need to accept that this is a natural part of the process and we need to prepare for it. Because if your attention is outward facing, when you die, another world will occur within your awareness because that karmic momentum is still there. It's still there's momentum that leads to a new world. Ego death can occur as well with salvia. I've done salvia a dozen times, and the same thing can happen without actually physically dying. But the ego death is still there, and that's why it can be very terrifying at the time, because there's no identity while you're tripping on salvia. No identity at all. There's no person there anymore, and the world, I think, is expressed through the wave function rather than particles. Yeah, I think that's the key word is remembering, right? So we've forgotten, and these are cycles. And if we can remember, if we can remember who and what we are before the beginning of the next iteration, then that's enlightenment and escape from the labyrinth. But if we can't quite remember, then we will continue on trying to, well, we'll be caught in the game still. So yeah, so everything that you take yourself to be in this world, if you still take yourself to be that at the moment of death, then that will somehow carry on and produce your next world. But that's what's happening with the digital realm for the entire species, because upon the extinction event, there will be no more human experiences to have, right? Because there's no more humans. So being having played this human game for so long, that there it's just another lesser um, holographic expression of the physical realm. That's the digital realm, right? That's why everything is becoming digitized, is to create this new realm which consciousness will accept to be the new fundamental world when the physical realm is no longer. Yes. Yeah. So at this singularity, I believe that there's two paths. Well, there's two paths to take, and also there's always the choice to just stop, right? Just stop on the path. That's enlightenment. But when we get to the extinction event, I believe that there's two paths on the two evolutionary paths to take, and one is basically the artificial one, which is the digital realm, and then one is the natural one, which I believe is taking us into planetary consciousness. I don't even know what that means, to be the consciousness, to be Gaia. I don't know what that's like, really, but pretty much guarantee there's no thoughts involved. There's no blah 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 going on in Gaia. And non-conceptualists, our job is to hold that stillness within the collective. This is the most important work. It's counter to everything that we're taught, because we're taught that doing things is the way to help. But the most fundamental way to help at the deepest level is to just hold the stillness, because there is a collective. And when you think of it, the vast majority of this collective is, right, just nonstop blah blah blah. So we are doing God's work by just holding the stillness. And you will be rewarded with positive karma, but that occurs in the background more or less. Store up, what was it? Store up your treasures in heaven. Is that something that Christ said? Something like that. No, I don't really know many people. I don't watch too many videos anymore or read anything. Solution seeker, do you know anything about Markov blankets? And the free energy principle? That sounds about right. We just take the thought realm, which is basically a imaginary realm that's just superimposed over top of over top of the physical realm. We just accept that to be accurate and true and relating to something, but it really isn't. we there it's that is the delusion, that is the dream that we're in, the dream that there are separately existing objects, that they seem to arise, the appearance of separately existing objects arise with the thoughts. If a if there's a word associated to a collection of senses, then that collection of senses appears to give rise to separately existing objects. But the fundamental, I don't know why it's doing that today so much. The next state is determined, I knew he would know. The next state is determined by the neighbors of the previous state. So it's turtles all the way, isn't it? It's just like like calculus. They're just trying to freaking fudge it and fuzzy it enough, right? It's another dualistic causal model, isn't it? No matter how he tries to blur the edges, that's what it is, right? It's just another way of trying to express causality through dualism, I believe, right? Work with me here. This is good because a lot of people, and I think this Carl guy is actually fairly legit, and a lot of people follow him. But that's fractal, right? Fractal is this reiteration, but it's always the self coming back onto itself. It's always just one, but in this process it appears as two. A literal blanket, okay. Pick a point and then move the blanket in some way. That point will move relative to the other points on the blanket. All right, but the blanket isn't everything. It, or the blanket is a set. The blanket is a set, isn't it? But the blanket would have to be everything. It's just another way of it's just another expression of the wave function and particle of everything occurring at once and separately existing objects moving through time. So it's just another way of presenting dualism and blurring it. It doesn't really fix anything, does it? It just doesn't. But then you can just have blankets, layers of blankets, could you not? Like it's brain theory, brain, right? Like one brain interacts with another brain and then they touch and then they go off like this. It's I think you recognize that it has to be the triune fundamental model of reality. That's the only way to it's only you have to they have to recognize that it is a state of superposition. So a blanket is a way of trying to separate body and mind, all the dualism, whatever you want to call it, positive, negative. The blanket probably serves as a dividing line between those dualities. But the dividing line is the self. The fulcrum is the self. I wish I could talk to this guy, but unless they want to solve the. Yeah, I know, but my triune system has done it. My triune system model, the fundamental model of reality, has resolved this. A physical theory of everything, not a true theory of everything. Well, again, to me, he's just it's the pea and shell game, the shell and those cups, shell and cup game. He's just using different cups, right? And the same with Donald Hoffman. What he's doing, it's the same fucking thing, really. It's just, if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out, right? Speaking of my freaking head, I'm gonna get a hat. There, now I've got a shadow on my head. Friston assumes this to be the principle of all biological reaction. Friston also believes his principle applies to mental disorders as well as artificial intelligence. Yeah, well, so does mine. So, like, yeah, mine explains all that too. But I'm wondering at what point in his theory do you go, okay, now I have the answer, right? Now the answer is so clear to me that I no longer need to engage in thought anymore, right? Where in his theory does this place like that arise? Where does it allow, does it not allow for any more questions to be asked? Because my theory doesn't allow for any more questions to be asked. It's basically the conclusion of thought. But the mathematical formula is positive, zero, negative. That's it. That's all you need. If you understood that they're all fractals expressing the same message over and over and over as the triune systems listed in my fundamental model of reality, then you could just stop there. You don't, once you see a hologram, the image in a hologram, it doesn't matter which piece you pluck out, it's always the same picture. So then you can stop when you recognize that it's a hologram. Exactly. So the what is the meaning of numbers? What is the purpose? So the only mathematical formula you need to know is positive, zero, and negative. That's it. That's the whole thing. The entire message is expressed in those three symbols. And there's no need for any further complexity. If you properly interpret the message contained within the triune system, then there's no, that is the conclusion of thought. That is the theory of everything. And if you're generating complexity, then you haven't gotten it. You haven't correctly interpreted and understood the message being expressed in the triune system. If you keep going on, it's like realizing that the Gödel's incompleteness theorem is relating to mathematics itself. Mathematics itself has no conclusion. And the realization of that, and then the ceasing of it intentionally and ceasing the thought process, that is the answer. To intentionally conclude and transcend thought. That's the answer. But of course, it will always be an approximation. The expression, the definition of something is exactly not that thing. The definition of something is exactly not that thing. They're just trapped. They're trapped in that Chinese finger lock, and they just keep fucking pulling. They just don't understand. They don't understand the true purpose of thought itself. And not understanding the reason of life, the reason for life, and the purpose of thought itself. They just continually blindly following Maya because they're entranced. And it's so hard to break them out of their trance. Because there's no way for me to express Sat Chidananda. But once you feel it, you go, oh, of course. There it is. This is what I've been searching for. But it takes a very still mind to experience Satchitananda. And most people can't get to that stillness. It's so freaking smoky here. And the El Nino's just starting. Next year is going to be worse. Forest fires? Well, don't have a bunch of fuel around your house. So keep the grass cut and trimmed and green if you can. And don't have a lot of big trees really close to your house. Oh, yes. There you go. Yeah, as wonderful as it is to be in the middle of trees, if they're not if they're not deciduous, like if they're evergreens, then they're prone to catching on fire. And if they're aspen, then you're probably good. But if you can get a sprinkler kit, if you're close to water, even just two sprinkler heads on each end of your house. That's the best way. Is just a sprinkler kit and a small pump. It might cost you a grand, but if you have access to water, put up a pump and a sprinkler kit. Do you think that one long meditation session or a handful of shorter ones throughout the day is more beneficial? Probably one longer one. The deeper you can get in each session into the stillness, I think that's better. But certainly, even every time you remember to, certainly have a regimented, disciplined meditation practice. Like I get up in the morning and I meditate for half an hour. Yes, every day, sort of a thing. But in addition to the scheduled meditation, just make it your life. As soon as you remember to, just Just coming back to that, the fire question. There's a program called Fire Smart. So if you Google Fire Smart, it'll tell you basically what I told you. Lessen the fuel, keep things green, stuff like that. Fire Smart. Well, it's a really, really nice day, so I might do stuff outside. Good, good. If I can help lead people to the space between your thoughts just by sitting here, that's kind of the goal. Because the teaching, the highest teaching is the silence, right? Good. Right on, guys. See you next Sunday.